gorgeous people. Happy New Year. How are you all? I hope you're well. I am. It is New Year's Day for me today, 1st of January, although you won't see this for a couple of days. Yay, start of the year. Last night, New Year's Eve night, or sort of late afternoon, early evening, I decided to do an inventory of my freezers. Obviously, I'm going to do an inventory on New Year's. Look, the partying days are over. I've had some great New Year's Eves. I've been to some great parties. I managed, at the end of 1999, I was up in town for the Millennium fireworks. That was great. But yeah, partying days are long since over. It's fine. I had a great time then, and now I'm perfectly happy to just be at home and quiet and watch the fireworks on telly. Anyway, so I decided to do an inventory of my freezers, and I thought, gosh, I've got loads of broad beans still. Oh, I know. I decided for lunch today, as a change from soup, I'm living on soup at the moment, loving it. But I decided as a change, I fancied broad beans on toast. You know, that broad bean mash I make. Broad bean hummus sort of thing. Anyway, yeah, to have that, I need some bread. I don't have any bread. So this morning, I'm telling you this because I had a bit of a weird random encounter. Yeah, I popped out this morning. It wasn't early, about sort of 9 o'clock, to get some bread. So I've just like hoofing it down the street, and ahead of me at a bus stop, I don't know if he was waiting for a bus, there was a guy and he looked really, really worse for wear. I mean, he looked like he was still hammered. He had that kind of face that does this sort of, can't focus. He was a bit staggery. And as I was approaching him, he said, "You got a light?" Of course I don't smoke. Why would I have a light on me? So I said, "No, sorry, mate." Back to carry on. And in a split second, he said to me, "Well, what have you come out for then?" Like, the only reason I would be allowed out of my house on New Year's Day morning is to walk around with matches in my pocket to light up fags for random strangers. What are you doing out then? Anyway, I'm kind of walking past him a bit, and I just, over my shoulder, I threw to him, I said, "I've come out for bread." Like, not that it's any of his business, but I just thought, don't be having a go at me for being out without matches. "I'm out for bread," I said over my shoulder, and he so quickly replied, "But I don't want bread, I want a light." Anyway, bless him. I hope he got home all right. He was properly staggering, silly idiot. I went and got my bread, came back, had to come back past him in the street, and I thought, I don't really want another encounter, so I swerved, let someone else walk past him. I swerved and carried on. So yes, for my lunch today, it might be more like tea, because I haven't even started them yet, so it's that thing of, I need to steam them first and then second skin them. Because don't put skins in your broad bean mash, they're too bitter, yuck. Anyway, digressing already, I just thought it was kind of a funny random encounter. Still, I'm having a little bit of post arrive. This didn't arrive today, but yesterday I had some post. I didn't even realise I'd had it, because yesterday was Saturday. I didn't go out all day until really late in the evening, and I can't remember now why I went downstairs because my granny trolley I'd left my granny trolley at the bottom of the stairs, bring it up, and there was a load of post, including, yes, some Christmas cards still. And I just wanted to share this one with you because it's so lovely. This is from Laura, but I don't know if you can make out all around this little picture. She's stitched, and it's so neat. It's such neat stitching, Laura. Bravo. But what I really loved is there's a note inside to me, and let's just say that Laura has changed quite a bit of her life up. She's changed things around a bit, and for the last couple of years has been growing a bit of her own food, and she's just said that she's so much happier. Laura, I grinned from ear to ear as I was reading it. making those changes. Sometimes you have to be a bit brave to make the jump, but she's done it and she's so much happier. And it's like I was saying the other day, isn't it? What more can you want from life other than to be content or to be happier than you were? Brilliant. Loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Right, now, today, I thought, hang on, quick glug. I've given my sister's water bottle a wash out. Even though it's brand new, still give it a wash out. And I can't remember who it was, but someone mentioned in comments that yes, it is an insulated one and it should keep something warm for up to 6 hours. I might try it at home today, actually. Never mind. I don't know when I'm going to go to the plot next because it looks like we've got quite a lot of rain on the way. So maybe I'll try it at home first. Maybe I'll make some hot chocolate in a minute, pop it in the flask, and then have it in a couple of hours and see how it does. But yeah, she reckoned about 6 hours to keep something warm. So I'll give it a test. Right, keep your thoughts straight. So I thought we'll just catch up on a little bit today before we really plunge headlong into this year. The next video after this one, I am planning to do a video all about budgeting for the whole year. Or at least what I do to budget for the whole year. And I mean, it has worked so well for me. Obviously, it has worked well for me because I manage perfectly well. I have a happy little life on not much money and it works for me. So I will share that in the next video. But today, I'm still sort of kind of in that holiday mode. You know, that sort of, and yes, I know folk work between Christmas and New Year, and I've worked between Christmas and New Year, but there's just something about that week of Christmas and New Year. I don't know, I think it's more psychological than anything, because like I say, I do still work, but there's a feeling of, oh, I can just kick back a bit. I can, watch films when I wouldn't normally, or I can spend a bit more time reading, that sort of thing. So I wanted to catch you up today a bit on a couple of books. Actually, it's slightly more than a couple. But I'm going to start first of all with TV because I've seen some great stuff and I think all of it, I'm hoping all of it will still be available on the various hubs or BBC iPlayer. And as I've mentioned before, I watch a lot of stuff via the hubs. Now, the only thing with it is they do have adverts on and you can't skip the adverts. And nor, I found this out very quickly when I started doing it this way, when the ads come on for your TV show, even you watch it on your computer, I thought, okay, while the ads are playing, I'm going to quickly switch into my email screen and do some emails, but it doesn't. It freezes the adverts. So you do your email, come back, and the adverts start again. Anyway, it's a small price to pay for free entertainment, isn't it? So, to start with, and I think quite a few of you were planning to watch as well, the Canterville Ghost, a new adaptation that was on with Anthony Head playing the ghost. And it was weird because he is the actor who, was it late 80s, early 90s? There was a whole series of coffee commercials. I think it was an instant coffee. It wasn't any special coffee. But, it might have been the first time an advertising agency did this as well, where the adverts built on each other. So the adverts almost became like a soap opera. And it was a will they, won't they series of adverts where I think he pops to his neighbour to say, can I borrow some coffee or sugar or whatever it is. And, anyway, Anthony Head and this other woman, I can't remember the female actor's name, but they were kind of gorgeous. They were pretty hot. It's like, oh, come on, snog. So he was a bit of a fwar in those days. I mean, I didn't find him particularly attractive, but he was considered like, oh, he's gorgeous, isn't he? So to see him playing the ghost, he was kind of almost unrecognisable. He was brilliant in it, I have to say, in my opinion. Great show. It's in two-hour parts, so it's 4 hours altogether, but that's got adverts in it as well. It whizzed by. Caroline Katz, I think, is the lead female actor in it. She's the one from Dr. Martin. You know that? I think it's a doctor show set in Cornwall. Anyway, playing an American, and I thought at first, oh, that's going to jar. It didn't. It didn't jar at all. The whole thing was an absolute glorious romp. It was an absolute romp, that's what I'm going to call it. It's a haunted house, a family move in, the ghost is trying to get rid of them, basic as that. And it's somewhere, there are kids in it, and the kids are trying to find the ghost and catch the ghost. So it's somewhere between sort of like Enid Blyton and Scooby-Doo, but for slightly more grown up. Yeah, it was fun. It was absolutely great fun. If it's still available, I highly recommend it. It's that lovely kind of old-fashioned family viewing. That's what it is. There's no swearing, there's no gore, there's no trauma, there's no jeopardy. I think if you're watching it with really little kids, it's not scary. I wouldn't say it was scary. There's maybe the Canterville ghost can appear in many different forms. He's got like a sort of a dress-up closet in his ghost quarters, so he can pick different outfits to be a different type of ghost. And there is one ghost that's maybe a little bit scary, but I would say that generally I don't think kids are going to be scared. I think they'll laugh at it. So yeah, if it's still available, that will be on the Channel 5 hub. If it's still available, highly recommend it. Now, on a completely different type of TV viewing for me, this is really left field for me, and it might surprise some of you, because it's just not, the characters are not people I'm interested in at all, but the process they were going through, I'm very interested in. It's a courtroom thing. And the reason I say I'm not interested in the characters is the whole drama is actually, it's pretty much it's a sort of enacted or reenacted documentary, if you like. The whole thing was based on the courtroom proceedings of the Wagatha Christie trial, as it came to be known, between two footballers' wives. I know, I mean, me, footballers' wives, I have zero interest. But it was really fascinating. I sort of watched the first 5 minutes because I'm interested, I'm sort of intrigued with the courtroom stuff. I was completely hooked. It was in 2 parts, 1 hour each, and amazingly, quite often on the hub, you can't watch the second episode until it's aired on regular TV. But in this case, I didn't have to wait for the TV airing. I could watch them both back to back on the hub, which is what I did because I couldn't take my eyes off it once I started. I think one of the reasons I found it so interesting, because like I say, I'm not interested in wags, wives and girlfriends, but so the courtroom aspect of it was fascinating. The way the evidence was presented, I had no idea it was done like that, in folders, and look for section D in your folder and you'll see whatever. But it was more the kind of, it was a trial in a way about this kind of modern world of social media influencers. I mean, what's a footballer's wife going to influence us anyway? This kind of fame-hungry, desperate for newspaper headlines and newspaper inches. Really interesting, fascinating. From I'm going to stand outside of this because it's not my world. But also what made it interesting was on a teeny tiny scale, I am in that world because I do work via social media. It was also from the point of view of, because it's about these 2 women. One, the Colleen Rooney, she came to fame because her then boyfriend was this wonder kid on the football pitch. I think he was 17 when Everton signed him up. He was everyone was talking about him. He was so young and so brilliant. And at the time, it's very sweet because they were childhood sweethearts. So at the time, suddenly he's got this huge fame as a really young lad, huge fame, huge money, and he's dating a lass who's still at school. So the newspapers, they put pictures of her in the newspaper. She's walking home from school in her school uniform, her hair braided, school regulation hair braids, just sweet and innocent. And I think because of that, because the first we got to know of her was as a school kid, their childhood sweethearts, I think that's the kind of, the nation warmed to her. She was the nation's little sweetheart. Not the entire nation, the football nation. She's their sweetheart. So she's one person in the courtroom. The other one, also with Colleen Rooney, because of that, right from the get-go, she's been one of the kind of the lead wags, if you like, the one who's had all the invites, all the attention, all the press and all of that kind of stuff, sort of on a par with Posh Spice, what's her name, Victoria Beckham, that kind of high profile. And then much later on, Rebecca Vardy. So she marries a footballer who's, I don't think he's ever captained England, whereas Colleen's husband has captained England. It's like she's sort of like the ugly sister in a way. Colleen Rooney is Cinderella. And I don't mean that in terms of looks. I'm not judging anyone's looks. But what came over through this whole courtroom proceedings was that Rebecca was desperate for attention, desperate for that media attention, desperate to make money. Don't sue me. I'm just saying what came over from the drama. The whole thing, by the way, every word that was spoken was direct from the transcripts, the court transcripts. So that's what I mean. It was sort of like a documentary. Every word was words that were spoken in court. It was interspersed with little bits of TV, your news guy standing in the street outside the court giving us an update. I think that was all clips, real TV news footage clips they used. So yeah, I think I found it absolutely enthralling. 2 hours, couldn't take my eyes off it. Interesting to see how that kind of court works, because it was the courts of justice. It wasn't a criminal court. So very different from the kind of court stuff we see on telly to do with either real life crime or, crime dramas. Very different to Judge Judy and Judge Rinder. Yeah, I highly recommend it. And like I said, it surprised me because the subject of it, I don't care about. I don't care about, how many followers you've got on Instagram and how many likes you get for a Twitter and all that. But as a sort of a judgment on us all of modern society about how that I found it thought-provoking on a personal level, because I was thinking, gosh, do I fall into that? Not their category, they're stratospheric. I just mean in terms of when I post something, what's my thinking behind posting something? Yeah, so that's really interesting. Bear with me a second. That's better. Yes, so the Rebecca Vardy, Colleen Rooney, wagon. I should tell you, sorry, the title, it was very simply Vardy versus Clooney. Not Clooney. Rooney. I've conflated Colleen and Rooney. Vardy versus Rooney. It was a libel case. I won't tell you the ending, I'm sure. I mean, I was aware of the ending, even though it's not something I would follow. You can't help it. The minute you turn your computer on, it's the kind of stuff that, is in your face. Now, on to a couple of shows very quickly. There's lots to chat about today. It might be another long one. Get a cup of tea, cup of hot chocolate, settle in. Onto stuff that's much more my kind of thing. And I think 2 programmes. One, I think I mentioned it last year. I can't remember. It was broadcast for the first time last year at sort of Christmas time, and it was shown again this year, and I watched it again because it was just so beautiful. Again, I think now we're on to the Channel 4 hub. Let me get the title for you exactly. It was called Extraordinary Escapes at Christmas with Sandy Toksvig. Now, this show has been on, I think there's been a couple of series. Extraordinary Escapes with Sandy Toksvig. Each episode is an hour long, and in each episode she picks 3 friends. I think so far it's always been female friends, and they go somewhere. It's a sort of like a glorified, like, get your words straight, a fantastic Airbnb type thing. You know, you go and stay in a little lodge on a mountain or some castle, whatever. It's basically go and have a B&B night, but in the most extraordinary place. Now, the regular series, I don't care for too much, because the places that she takes her friends for the night, they are so far away from anything I can ever imagine doing or having, because you just know that these places are going to be fantastically expensive. The build itself, you know, this is some amazing architecture, amazing locations. Yeah, it's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, to stay there for the night. So as a sort of a luxury goods programme, I don't really care for it. But what I do like about it is her, how she demonstrates, she's not doing actively, but friendship. It's seeing her with a friend and how they play and laugh and enjoy together. That's really lovely. So like I say, I don't normally like the show because of the expense. But in the Christmas one, oh my goodness. So they're in Norway. Her 3 friends for the Norway trip are, Maggie Adarin Pocock. Is it Pocock? I always forget the last bit. Maggie Adarin Pocock, who is an engineer, physicist, is into the stars. That's great. So we've got a science geek on the trip. Faye Ripley, who is an actor you might know best for Cold Feet. And and Deborah Meaden, who is, you'll know her from Dragon's Den. I've never seen it, but again, it's one of those programmes you don't have to watch to be aware of Deborah Meaden, and she's always struck me as being quite formidable, quite fierce, quite scary. The reason I love this show, the reason I'm recommending it is, it's the landscape. Oh my God, it's just stunning. Utterly, utterly stunning. She and Maggie, for their bit of the trip, they take a boat ride out and go whale watching. It's just beautiful. And what's lovely in the programme is their joy, their excitement, that kind of, it's sort of like stripping away all the pretense of, here I am on telly being glamorous and presenting. That's all out of the window. This is just a couple of women out on a boat giggling and laughing because they've seen a whale. You know, just as any of us would. That's beautiful. But the part that was just beautiful, and I found myself almost holding my breath for the whole thing. I could definitely feel my heart rate slow. I just stopped, and I was completely in the moment. The first part, when she's with Deborah Meaden, they're staying in a wildlife sanctuary way up above the Arctic Circle, and within it they're in a wolf sanctuary. So there they are in the hut, and it's beautiful, and they can look out and they can see the pack. But they actually get to step outside and meet the wolves. It's a very, very controlled situation. They're with two guides, and I think they've reared the wolves from pups. So although the wolves live wild, they have had this sort of human interaction to make it, it makes it safe. I don't want to say too much. It's in the first 15 minutes or so of the show. It's the first section of the show. If you don't watch the whole show, I highly recommend watching those first 15 minutes, because I can feel my emotions welling now. There's just something so extraordinarily beautiful, touching, powerful in that moment of utter quietness, just face to face with a wolf. Amazing, utterly amazing. Yeah. Please watch it if you get a moment. Like I said, even if it's just that first 15 minutes, well worth it. And now on the subject of wolves, another show I've watched, and that's pretty much it. This has been pretty much it for my viewing, is A Court Case, The Canterville Ghost, Deborah Meaden, Face to Face with a Wolf, and then this last one I think was BBC, so BBC iPlayer. The title is Snow Dogs, and it was with Gordon Buchanan. Is that his name? I think that's his name. Gordon Buchanan is a wildlife photographer. Really love Gordon Buchanan. I'll watch anything that he's in. Again, it's like the wolf moment. There's something about him that just feels very quiet and centred and at one with both himself and the world. It's very calming. And the premise in Snow Dogs was he wanted to learn to run with the dogs, a sled with dogs. So of course I'm going to watch that, aren't I? I've been fascinated by that for years. He's never done it before. And actually, in a way, it was about him learning to do it so he could do a bit of a Cresta run in the dog sledding world. I kind of wasn't interested in that in a way. What was beautiful, and again, similar feelings to watching Deborah Meaden with the wolf encounter, it was about how he clicked about halfway through. Well, not about halfway through the programme, he clicked about what he was doing wrong, because he was doing something wrong. None of it was working for him. He was crashing under the... And it was very simple. He hadn't bonded with the dogs. He hadn't made himself part of the pack. So instead of it being 7 dogs and a human, it becomes a team of 8. And it was, again, just utterly joyful. And because he's a photographer, loads of photography in it, and some of the images he captured right up close, right into these dogs' eyes, and you can see the wolf in them. Stunning, 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 stunning. I would watch that programme. If he did a daily 1-hour show of him with these dogs, I would watch it. It was delicious. I loved it. Yeah, Snow Dogs, Gordon Buchanan, I'm pretty sure that's his name, BBC iPlayer. The Sandy Toksvig, Extraordinary Escapes at Christmas, that's the Channel 4 hub. The Canterville Ghost, Channel 5 hub. The Vardy versus Rooney, Channel 4 hub. I think Channel 4 hub, yeah. Have a look. Anyway, so moving on, crikey. Oh, it might be a long one today. Yeah, it's going to be a long one. A few books. So, my guilty treat at Christmas, my treats for a tenner, Mystery in White. And what I loved, I'll talk about the book in a second, very quickly. My sister had read it. She'd seen the video, and then we were chatting, and she said, I couldn't believe when you brought up Mystery in White, because that's her little Christmas tradition, Christmas kind of secret pleasure, is to read a sort of a classic crime fiction. And it all started for her with this book, which she picked up a few years ago, read it and thought, I'm going to do that every Christmas from now on. And do you remember I was talking about the P.D. James short stories, Mistletoe Murders, that had been given to me, and I thought, I'm not sure. It was given to me by my sister, and that had been her little Christmas guilty secret read. And then I read it and loved it. Yay! So I think my sister's tradition of a classic, a crime classic, might become my tradition as well. I'm nicking it off her. This is now going to go to my mum, because I was telling my mum about it and she fancies it too. Oh, what a great read. Is it a ghost story or is it a crime story? I'm not gonna tell you. Again, rather like Canterville Ghost though, it's a bit Enid Blyton, it's a bit Scooby-Doo. It's great fun. I scoffed it all in one go, couldn't put it down. What's going on? Who did it? Who done it? What's happening here? Whose are the footsteps in the snow? Oh. Now, bear in mind it's written, when was it written? In the 20s. It's quite verbose at times, and at times I was thinking, shut up, get on with it. So you have to kind of just let yourself wallow in the style of it and not get impatient, as I did. But yeah, great fun, dead easy read, a lovely, I know it's not Christmas anymore, you don't have to read it at Christmas, but one of these kind of cold, chilly, that's the same as cold, wet, that's what I was trying to get at. We've been having so much rain, the dampness makes things feel even colder. All we want to do is get under a quilt and read. That's the perfect book for it. Next, do you remember? My mum got this free with some other books she bought, had been banging on about it to me, sent it to me, and I thought, not sure it's quite me, but you know, thank you Mum, I'll give it a read. I read about 30 pages and then I did this. Oh dear. Oh, it's just absolute, what a... I mean, it was barely writing, it's more like typing. Formulaic, cliched, absolute nonsense. I knew exactly what was going to happen by the end of the book. What's the point of reading it? I know the ending already because it's so formulaic. Look, I'm sure that it's probably a load of you who've read it and really enjoyed it. Fine. It's taste, isn't it? It's very, very rare that I don't finish a book. Very rare. But, you know, it's just such poor writing. And I thought, I've only got so many more hours left on this planet. How many hours let's say I live another 40 years. How many hours in 40 years? I don't know. But, you know, even if I lived 10 lifetimes, that wouldn't be enough lifetimes to read all the books I want to read. It's like, where is it? Oh, it's over there. That bookmark that Barbara gave me. So many books, so little time. From now on, I'm not wasting time on books. The thing is, because it was a gift from my mum, the thing about gifts is you feel obliged, don't you, to finish it. If I ever give you a gift of a book, please do not feel obliged to finish it. If you get 30 pages in and you think, I don't like this, give it away again. Please don't waste any of your precious life on a book you don't like. That book, rubbish, absolute rubbish. So I chucked it across the room and I'll take it to the charity shop, of course. Went over to my bookshelves and thought, what's on my shelves that I would like to read? I picked up Tove. I've never known how to pronounce it. Tove Jansson. She's a Finnish author. You will know her. Everyone will know her for the Moomin books. I've never been... the Moomin's gorgeous, love the illustrations, but I've never been one of these avid Moomin nerds. I've got a friend who's an avid Moomin nerd, has to have Moomin everything. But I've read a couple of others of hers, so this is one of her books for adults. She came to doing books for adults, I think she was in her 50s by then. And So this one's called Sculptor's Daughter, and it's a collection of short pieces. Her father was a sculptor. Her mother was an illustrator, a book illustrator. So her childhood, when was she born? So this must be so she was born in 1914. So these memories of hers, this is childhood memories, so they must all be around about 1920. Short pieces. Oh, how to describe it? She has a beautifully succinct way of writing. Her writing is so crisp and so clear. You're there straight away. But all the pieces, I've just said crisp and clear, but there's something of an impressionist quality. If we think of impressionist paintings, how they somehow, the detail may be fuzzy, but a moment of light is captured, a moment of temperature is captured, a moment of feeling is captured. And that's very much how my response was to these short stories. The light coming through the balustrades on a staircase, through the banisters, the feel of something, the texture of something under her fingers, a taste of something, a smell, a sound. Those are the things which spark these little jewels. It's sort of like if her childhood is a tiara, each of these short stories represents one of the jewels on the tiara. All of them stand up on their own beautifully, but as a whole, there's just this wonderful sense of place, time, this bohemian upbringing. One gets the sense of this sort of wild child, wonderful wild child, and how that one can see how that wild child developed into the person that gave us the Moomins. Brilliant. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. I've got two of her others, the winter book and the summer book, which I'm actually going to send to Paul, because now that he's doing his writing course, I think they'll be really great for him to read. I think he's got to read something in the category of autobiography, so this would be brilliant. Yes, highly recommend it. Tove Jansson's Sculptor's Daughter, or some of these pieces also appear in the winter book. The winter book, again, is a collection of shorts. The summer book is more of a novel in a traditional sense. Brilliant. Then, how are we doing for time? Eek! Then this is really eclectic reading. So I've gone from crime, a crime, or is it ghost story? Finland in 1920, impressionist kind of jewels, to Haruki Murakami's What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. You may know him for novels like The Wind-Up Bird Chronicles, Wild Sheep Chase, Norwegian Wood. Now, I bought this, I had to look in it the other day. I bought it in 2009 when it came out in paperback, and it's sat on my shelf ever since. Haven't got around to reading it for whatever reason. My life changed a lot in 2009, and I think, reading stopped for a while. I had read, in the 2000s, I'd read a couple of his novels. I can't even remember which now. I mean, honestly, in those days, I used to read so much, at least a book a week, and loads of them have been forgotten. That's fine. I had a chat about this with someone. It's 2-3 years ago now, and they were asking about, we were talking about books. And it came up in the conversation, there was a book I'd read that she had also read, and I couldn't remember a thing about it. And she was like, well, how can you not remember any of the details of the book? It's like, well, because I read so many books. I'm not reading a book in order to cement it and be able to quote from it for the rest of my life. I'm reading it for entertainment. I read it, I move on, I read the next thing. Some books really do stick with me, but in the same way that you know, if you were to watch a 1 hour drama on TV every week for your entire life, you're not going to remember every single 1 hour drama you've ever seen, are you? You're just not going to remember. So, yeah, she was a bit she was almost trying to tell me off that somehow, you know, well, you're not reading properly then if you can't remember. Well, how do you read properly? Anyway, the point is, I'm sure some of you get that too. You know, all the classics I've read, something came up the other day, and it was, they were talking about Flaubert, Madame Bovary, most of you will know. I read all of Flaubert, I can't remember any of them. Oh, that was it. It was something on French literature, because I was thinking they were. I must have watched something on Sky Arts or something, because they were talking about Genet and Cocteau and Sartre, and I had a phase where over the course of about a year I kind of pretty much read every French classic, modern and a bit older. They've gone in and they've left again. Anyway, back to the Murakami. So I read a couple of his novels, and I didn't like the novels themselves in terms of, for me, excuse me, the character in one of them, I wish I could remember which one, it doesn't matter, but the character in one of them, there was a bit of a misogynistic tone to it, and I just didn't like it. However, I loved his writing. So, in other words, I didn't like the subject of the book, but I just knew that I was reading a great writer. You can be a great writer and I'm not going to like your work necessarily, or you might write something else. And anyway, so when this came along, I thought, well, I know that I love his writing, his style, and I know I love running. It's got to be a no-brainer. So I finally, after 13, 14 years, took it down from the shelf to have a read. I loved it. I absolutely blooming loved it. This was another wallow book, because the central the central theme of the book is running. I've talked about this before, how much I miss it. I dream about running. I have dreams in which I'm running. I've woken up before now crying because at some point in the dream, my dreaming me realises I can't run anymore. And then I realise, oh, that's awful. Do you have to be a runner or have been a runner to enjoy this book? I'm not sure. I'll come on to a bit more of that in a second. It's written, it jumps backwards and forwards in time a bit. He starts out roundabout, so it's the mid-noughties, he's 56. He's getting back into his running, he's training for the New York Marathon. But then there are times in the book he hops back to remembering the first time he ran a full marathon, which happened to be from Athens to Marathon. He wanted to see if he could do it. Idiot in the heat. So there are a lot of references to sort of training and that sort of thing, but I think it's written in a way that you could enjoy even if you're not a runner. But the point is, it's about so much more than that. It's about the process. It's about the mindset, the kind of person who enjoys and relishes in the long game rather than a sprinter. So this is what I mean about when I talk about sport, I'm not talking about sport. It's the life metaphors. The thing about long distance running is it's the process. It's the process and the joy simply of running, not for any particular goal. Of course, if you do a marathon, you know, the goal is to run a full marathon. And you might be at a stage in your running where you're interested in times and you want to beat your own times. But for the most part, putting on your shoes in the morning or evening, whenever you do it, and going out for a run, it's not for any reason other than the joy of running, of just being out there running. and the thoughts that go through one's mind as one runs. He runs and listens to music. I never listened to music, partly a safety thing. You know, as a woman running, I want to be aware of everything that's around me. So all those, the thoughts that, you know, are free to run through one's mind because you're out there for an hour or 2 hours. And just being in the moment and enjoying it for it being for the sake of what it is. I'm not being articulate today. I suddenly feel a bit cold, if I'm honest. As I was reading it, I was thinking about gardening too, how that's not instant gratification. I think that's what it all boils down to, is maybe there are two types of people. Those who've read Tolkien and those who haven't, no. Those who are, you know, long distance runners and those who are sprinters. Those who need to accomplish something quickly, finish something quickly. Like, you know, knitting. You know, do you want to knit a scarf because you can get it done in one day, or are you prepared to knit a really intricate Fair Isle blanket which might take weeks, months to accomplish? With the garden, there's that thing of we plant our seeds, and something, especially something like, say, parsnips, which we might even be planting in February, and we wait until Christmas for them, or purple sprouting broccoli, we plant those seeds in March, and we're not going to be starting to eat it until February, March the next year. So I definitely think I've got the long distance runner's mindset. I'm very much about the long game. It doesn't have to come quickly. I was talking about this with Paul on the phone the other day. I'm going to send him this book too, because Murakami is one of the authors on his reading list. Now, his novels are really quite long, so I thought, okay, well, this is an introduction, good introduction to his writing that's quite short. And like I said, yeah, it's the premise is all about him training for his marathon, but it's part travelogue. Is that the right word? Travelogue, yeah. It's about his time in Boston. Boston sounds lovely from the way he describes it. I think I would like to live in Boston. He's in Japan at times. So, yeah, it's about so much more than running. Does someone describe it on the back more succinctly than me? Equal parts travelogue, training log, reminiscence. Yeah. It does say it's a must-read for fans of this masterful yet private writer. I mean, I highly recommend. This is one of my highly recommends. I loved it, but I don't know. Do you remember when I was reading the books by the bookseller, Sean Bithell, and I was saying, I wonder if someone who's not a bookseller would enjoy these books as much as I've enjoyed them. And I know loads of people who have enjoyed them. So maybe loads of people would enjoy this even if they're not a runner. And instead of thinking about running, thinking in terms of those longer distance things. I cut my thought off a second ago about when I was chatting with Paul about it, of saying it's the difference between, in a way, the sort of the Instagram generation or the Instagram type of mindset, and I do Instagram, but that sort of instant impact. You know, like with say a garden, yeah, you can Instagram something, but how does that same thing look 3 months later? Have you continued to tend it, or that instant impact that you gave us, is it all covered in weeds and half dead now because you haven't done that long game with it? I think that makes a sort of sense. It makes sense to me. Loved it. Give it a read if you fancy. Right, really, really quickly now, because I know I've been gabbing on for ages. But it's kind of about the books and about life as well, isn't it? So I hope it's of company/entertainment value, as well as book review value. Now this I've had on my shelf. I'm trying to work out how long it's been there. 6 months maybe. It was a book from Lorraine. Thank you, Lorraine. By Patrick Leigh Fermor. Now, she sent this to me after I talked in one of my videos. I was reminiscing about the time when I finally got to meet him. I didn't realise it was him. I was talking to him, telling him how fantastic Patrick Leigh Fermor is. It was when I had the bookshop. I went on and on and on, telling him about this brilliant writer, you must read him, and it was him. So this was a joy to read. 3 Letters from the Andes. He goes to the Andes in 1971 with a bunch of, I think, 6 of them. This wasn't published until 1991, I think. So it's 3 letters that he wrote home to his wife. They were never meant for publication. So it's quite a different take on his writing. I would say if you're going to read him, don't read this one first, because it's not typical. These letters he wrote for his wife. For publication, he's sort of topped and tailed them a bit, but it's still his wonderful, wonderful writing. I adore this man's books. He is, as I was saying when I talked to him previously, he's a polyglot. He just is the most amazing man, just learning languages and being able to use them almost instantly. He's also a polymath. His knowledge, his range of taste it's just huge and eclectic. Pardon me. Did I make any notes to share? Yes, I did. My impressions. So this thing about being a polymath. All of his books, the references they're multicultural. He references the classics. He references all sorts of other different languages. He references all sorts of literature. Like 2,000 years of literature he will reference, architectural references, fine art references, botanical references. I mean, is there anything this guy doesn't know about, or at least have a bit of a toe in the water of? I mean, he's just ridiculous. He's ridiculous. Also, in his works, he will drop into a different language. There'll be a sentence in a different language. Now, if it's in French, you know, I'm fine with that. I read and comprehend French better than I speak it. There might be a line of Spanish, but somehow, I don't know what it is about him, I understand it. So it must be that he, you know, the context he puts it in. But yeah, he drops in and out of different languages. His vocabulary is really extensive, so almost always with his books, there's almost always one word that I need to grab my dictionary and look up, but I like that. I like to learn as I go. So yeah, thank you, Lorraine. I kept, you know, the other day I was saying I have different bookmarks for different books. I kept the card that Lorraine sent with it, and that was my bookmark for reading this. That is not going to go to the charity shop. That's going on my bookcase. Yes, a very, very scholarly man. I think it's that sort of, he's just a polymath. That's the best way to describe him. From scholarly to soulful to, I feel like I get everything from one of his books. I can't remember the titles. There's 2 really famous books that got him going, and these are the 2 I would recommend if you've never read him before. And they're the books that kind of started, he wrote them later in life, but they go back to him being, I think he was 19 years old, and he set out on foot. He walked from, famously, the Hook of Holland to Constantinople. He walked and had so many adventures on the way. So the books for that there are 2 books. The first one is called A Time of Gifts, and the second one is Between the Woods and the Water. A Time of Gifts, Between the Woods and the Water. Those are his 2 books about, I just read them and he blew my mind. Beautiful, beautiful writing anyway. But I couldn't get my head around, who is this man? He is amazing. Oh yeah, my kind of modern day hero. And I met him. How wonderful. Right, finally, Esther, quick. I read Meadowland. That was my joint book of the year. I'm now thinking that Patrick Leigh Fermor ought to have been... I think I would have said that if it had been one of his other books, but The Three Letters, I loved them. I really loved them, and I'm so grateful, Lorraine. Thank you for sending. But it's not the best of his books, so that's why he didn't make it into the top one. So I was mentioning I was reading Meadowland. I'd read it, loved it. A modern take on agriculture and how we're changing again. I mentioned at the time, this is the other one I had been reading. I'd started. Adrian Bell, By Road. 100 years ago, the coming of mechanisation. Oh, I've loved it. I've absolutely loved it. And again, I was mentioning haymaking in the Meadowland. There's a haymaking section in this. It's just a beautiful little window into a moment in our agricultural history. It's set in Suffolk, so it's very specific to Suffolk and Suffolk soil. Oh, and the thing I loved about it is the mentions, because it is a time when they're transitioning from horse to, tractor. Of course, the horses are Suffolk punches. Suffolk Punch is a beautiful breed of heavy horse. The kind of my favourites, I think. And of the heavy horses, Suffolk Punches, they're quite light, they're quite slight. They are the most gorgeous colour. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google, you should be able to find it, I would think. Suffolk Punch, as in punch, or punch that you drink. They're this beautiful russet ginger colour, almost. And their manes are, little fly, and their manes are sort of anywhere from dark strawberry blonde through to almost palomino blonde. Beautiful. They don't have feathered feet like some of the big heavy horses. They have the most gorgeous backsides. They have beautiful bums. They're such strong but compact horses. Yeah, so I loved it from that point of view. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I say, it's just a glimpse into another world, a world that's almost recognisable to us now, but was, it's the last breath of that agricultural world. Gorgeous. I've actually got another of his books. This is Which Way Can We See? You see that run of books there? They're all Little Toller Press books. Little Toller Press is one of my absolute favourite presses. They're based in Dorset. All their books are to do with rural living. I think they're all reprints of classics. So I have another one of Adrian Bell's, Men and the Fields. What's lovely with this is Nash, the artist, British artist, that some of you may know for his war art. He's famously a war artist. He illustrated this the first time round. So all of his illustrations have been incorporated, and all of the colour lithographs that were in the original publication, just finding it, have been reproduced in here. So that's obviously the book cover when it was a first. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, there's a few of it. I'm upside down. There's a few of them in there. So I'm not actually reading this one next. You might think that's the perfect follow-on. I've got a different one, which I'll tell you about another day, because I think that's long enough chatting on about books and telly and random encounters in the street this morning and what I'm going to have for my very, very late lunch at this rate. So yay! I hope that's given you some ideas of things you might like to try in terms of shows on the telly, on the hubs to entertain you, or books that you think you might also like to curl up with. That was a really eclectic bunch though, wasn't it? Murder mystery, Finland in the 20s, Haruki Murakami, running, modern agriculture 100 years ago. Oh, and mountaineering in the Andes with Mr. Lee Firmer. Brilliant. All over the place. Love it. Really, really enjoyed this. I've enjoyed this bunch of books, and more than anything, I've just enjoyed this lovely quiet time between Christmas and New Year when I've said, you know what, yes, Vivi, at 8 o'clock in the evening you're allowed to switch your brain off and wallow in some fantastic writing. I feel very lucky to be in a position to do that. Yay! All right, lovelies. So I'm going to see you again soon. As we go into January, I'm not sure how often videos are going to be. I always used to do Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. And then over the autumn, I was just doing 2 a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays, or was it Wednesdays and Sundays? I don't think I'm going to do anything so prescriptive as we go into this year. They'll just happen when they happen, and we'll see them when we see them. But the next one is planned. It's not filmed. It is planned already, and it's going to be that budgeting for a whole year, because I think that'll be useful right now at the beginning of the year, because that's what I will be doing myself anyway. It's that time of year for me to get on with it. So I shall bring you that. And yeah, we'll just bounce along as merrily as we can into this new year. On that note, please all look after yourselves, look after each other, please be kind. If nothing else in life, be kind. All right, gorgeosities, cheerio.